Thank you, folks. As the credits roll, please welcome Sandi DuBowski, the director of the film. We're also going to hand out some sign-up sheets. Sandi not only directs the film, but does all the marketing for the film pretty much. And there's a sign-up sheet so you can get on the mailing list and please help spread the word about this film. I have so many questions to ask, and I want to give a chance for the community here to really be a part of this. I announced it. It's kind of, I felt like there's a homecoming level here for the screening, and feel that this community is really also one of the many communities that are a part of this film. And let's start with, I couldn't remember how many years you've been working on this, but this has been a big project that you've been a part of for many years. Where did it start, and why did it start?
So, I did. How many people here saw Trembling Before God? Okay, about half. So that was a film that I did about Hasidic and Orthodox Jews that are lesbian or gay. It came out in 2001 at Sundance, and I had gone to Jerusalem to look for people to be in the film, and everyone kept saying, "Well, the chief rabbi of Israel's his nephew is gay. Amichai, you should meet him." So I asked Amichai to be in the film, and he refused. Maybe because he was a little bit of a diva and he said he wanted his own movie. He said, "I don't do collage." But in all fairness, Trembling was so much about the struggle to belong within Orthodoxy. And for him, he was already really post-denominational and post-Orthodox. So it wasn't quite a fit, but we became friends. And we became friends. This was the late 90s. And in 2003, I started to film him. So it's been 21 years of filming.
Wow. I can't imagine the editing job and good job in really putting together a story there and some beautiful dramatic moments while capturing really a real slice of modern Judaism in such a like vibrant way. I'd love to hear, you've been traveling with this film a little bit, and it's still at the beginning of its life, but it's been going around the world. Here we're sitting, we're at the JCC. It's a mostly Jewish community, I assume. I could tell by some of the reactions to jokes and certain things that most of them possibly have met Amichai. How does this play as far away as possible?
You asked if the Scheitel joke landed. I was like, but even it lands with non-Jews. It's like, don't touch the wig. I mean, it's kind of funny, you know. Well, it's been very interesting. The film has had kind of an electrifying response. Like, some people are coming to see the film multiple times. It's really touching a nerve. I think, you know, having opened Trembling Before God after 9/11 at Film Forum and felt what it meant to gather and what it meant to be together and what it meant to be in person, and that there's something post October 7th, post election, that people really want to be in person watching the films. I think people are really feeling it. There's a lot of questions in the film. There's a lot of grappling. But, you know, we're playing at IFC right now. We're actually playing there through the 24th. If there's anyone else who want to see it, it's downtown IFC. And we had a mother who came to see the film, and she said to me, "I'm coming back." She came that weekend and brought her 16-year-old, 19-year-old daughters. And when her daughter was out of earshot from us, she said, "My daughter, my 16-year-old, just told me that the film changed her life, that she can now imagine being a Jew." And I was like, that's incredibly moving. Like, this is a roadmap for her. I was at the Rome Film Festival, and, we had just a cascade where every time we screen, people email us. So you can always email us at hello@sabbathqueen.com. But people share their stories. And this woman said, I'm Roman, I'm Catholic. I thought all Jews were fundamentalists. She said, "You're this Jewish director bringing this progressive Jewish vision to Rome, and you really upended my categories. Like, you disturbed my polarization, and I'm really thankful for it. So thank you." So that's been like another reaction. Like you know, we're just getting so many different kinds of, like, we had a Muslim Jewish couple come to see the film, and they've never met another Muslim Jewish couple. They never saw their story on screen. They were just wept through the movie. And, whenever they're in a Jewish space or Muslim space, they don't feel welcomed. So I think there's a lot of people from interfaith families and backgrounds who are also coming to the film and having very profound reaction. So whether it's the woman cantor who's been a cantor for 40 years and she's connecting to the female divine, or it's like someone's doesn't know how to square their disagreement around Israel Palestine, like, there's so many levels in which people are connecting.
Has this impacted Amichai's work at all? Is there a room for a sequel, a next stage, another chapter?
You're like it's like there's a kid who asked in the theater, they were like, is there going to be a Sabbath Queen 2? I was like, how old are you? They were like, I'm 7. I'm like, can you imagine being 28 and having finished this film? But, it's been really interesting. I think Amichai has been, he regrets not being here. He would have loved to be here. He's in Israel right now, because we're about to go have our Israel premiere. Like at the Jerusalem Cinematters and the Tel Aviv Cinematters. It's actually over Hanukkah. It's a Jerusalem Jewish Film Festival. So the big news is that Rabbi Benny Lau, his brother, agreed to do the premiere with us. So this is a big deal. And I think Amichai has been nervous about the reaction from Israelis, from rabbis, from his family, and it's been just so incredibly moving. I think that I think audiences are definitely reacting to what it means to have these two brothers who don't agree. They're they're in different positions politically, ideologically, but they disagree with such love and such respect. And there's something about the times that we're living in that are so toxic and polarized, where some people have cut off ties with each other and they don't speak to each other because they can't agree. But these brothers, for me, and I think for many people, are role models about how to do the difficult dialogue and how to continue to do it and how to be connected. And I think for the Jewish world, I mean, I was just saying the last film I just saw here was Legend of Destruction, which was about Sinat Chinam. And like, we need these models of like how we can be a Jewish people and hold our differences. So I think for Amichai, it's been very powerful to kind of have his brother come on the journey with him.
That's amazing, and we could really dig into his brother's relationship and the family's relationship, and I don't know if the rest of the family has his mother's reacted to the film. Has she seen it?
I mean, Amichai there's a place called Feel Beit in Jerusalem. It's kind of on the seam of East and West. And it's a place where a lot of Palestinian queer and straight people go. And Amichai did a screening, like a secret private screening there, and had Palestinian LGBTQ and straight people. We had a lot of Israeli Jewish spiritual innovators and his mother. His mother held his hand through the whole screening, and she just so proud of him. And then she said, Amichai, call Sandi right now. So she calls me on the phone and she said, I can't wait till you come to Jerusalem. And so, that is a lot of love from his mother too.
And yet his father, I don't remember I didn't think his mother was as critical as the father and his brother. But they were willing to give you interviews. They were willing to be a part of this from the beginning. Was there ever any resistance?
Look, I waited too. I waited 13 years to ask Benny. Only when he came to Amichai's smicha, his ordination at JTS, did I feel there was an open door. And then I asked him, and then I flew to Jerusalem a month later, and he sat for that, really what was a 2-hour interview that we sculpted like an arc from rejection to affirmation. But, I mean, his mother, we didn't shoot that much together. But I think within the nuclear family of Amichai, there's a lot of love, even when he's certainly put them to the test, over years.
Um, it's interesting watching this movie and watching him go from being such a rebel to really, I mean, that's by the way, beautiful dramatic building to create him into something. It's opposite. Usually you go from being conservative to rebellious, and he goes from being this rebel to and I like forgot. I almost forgot of the what the old Amichai was like. Um, um, how is that process for you as a filmmaker to watch that over the 21 years?
I do want to go back to one thing about his mom. When I did Trembling, I spent 6 years trying to crisscross the globe, trying to find any Orthodox parent who had a lesbian or gay kid who would be public and in the film. And after 6 years, I could find none. So I do want to just recognize the history here, that this is a family that history has changed. And look at this, his mother's in this movie public. So I just want to recognize that because I do think there's something very powerful about that. Um, yeah, I mean, look, I really believed in Amichai. So I believed in him saying, I want to make change from within. I believed that he could be the force and the change and, you know, take on JTS, take on the conservative movement for interfaith marriage. Like, I was not as horrified as some of the people who were like really upset with him, as you can see. I mean, certainly in the film, but um, I guess I was a little more patient. Now, Amichai did officiate my interfaith queer wedding with my husband, Eric. And, he, like, it would have been hard if he weren't able to do that. Amichai buried my father. He comforted my family in a year of mourning. So, there is like a very deep connection with Amichai and my own spiritual journey, my Jewish journey. But I believed in his path and, was there to support him and had to constantly navigate all of these relationships of like friend and rabbi and, and as a director, protagonist. So it was complicated, but I feel like we're still very close.
He's forgiven, I guess. I find this will be. I'll open it to questions from the audience right after this, but I find that one of the biggest this film actually confronts this beautifully, and brings up a very scary idea that the between the orthodoxy and the secular parts of the Jewish world of Israel, there's this huge divide, and there are very few bridges. Amichai really being one of the few. And some say, I was just talking to somebody the other week, that some say that right now in Israel, the politics, it's not about left and right. It's about secular and religious. This is what's dividing there. Even, I mean, as an example, even Avigdor Lieberman, who's a right winger, is somehow an extreme right winger, is somehow part of the not religious parties, which makes him part of a new coalition of parties. Um, how do you resolve this? What is your hope there?
It's hard because, I actually haven't been for 10 years. So I don't know what the reaction's going to be. I think that there is a little bit of concern about some kind of right wing backlash taking this there. We don't know. We're trying to prepare for kind of very careful messaging. I think having Amichai's brother kind of give his stamp of approval from that Orthodox camp, even if it's modern Orthodox, is, I think is important. Um, but I'm ready to really listen and really take in sort of what the reactions are going to be. I'm sure that in that room is going to be a wide spectrum of people who are maybe center right, people who are very, very left, people who, I mean, I have people who look at the last 2 minutes of this film, where we're talking about Gaza, and they say, thank you. I'm so happy that those last 2 minutes are in the movie. And I have some people who say to me, I love the film. I hate those last 2 minutes. I have some people, I had a woman just recently say, I love the film. I hate the last 2 minutes, but I'm still recommending it to all my friends. And I feel like that for me was a win in terms of like she's sitting in the discomfort of maybe not aligning fully politically with Amichai's message, but she's still willing to engage in the conversation and even recommend it. So I'm hoping that the film can be this way to kind of challenge people, to open people, to make people feel deeply, to, to align with the film, to express something that they don't see in the world, that doesn't, like, a piece of culture that feels so mirrors their experience on so many levels. So I'm like, I have like 138 pages right now of just emails and responses and texts. Like, the response is just mind blowing. And I've been through this with Trembling, and there's a way in which this feels maybe even bigger in some way.
Amazing. We're just coming off our other Israel Film Festival here, where it was constantly repeated this need to be able to hear each other and to be able to talk to each other, not immediately, it's either one side or the other side. You can't be anywhere in the middle. There's no room for any other position except for ours. And thank you for elevating this message. We will be happy to take some questions from the audience. We're passing a microphone around. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I knew Amichai's father in Jerusalem. He was the spokesman for the foreign ministry. He was Moshe Dayan's spokesman. He was the most formal, conservative person. He would come out from the cabinet meetings and he was like, in his suit, and you would never get to know him. He never sort of let down his guard at all. And so I thought it was really beautiful in this film that I said it to myself in the beginning of the movie, his father is rolling over in his grave. It's never going to happen. And it's so beautiful that his father accepted and loved him for who he was. And so I also married outside the faith, and my father threatened to sit Shiva. And he came around finally, and it was such an incredible, loving thing to do. So I love this movie, and I want to join. Yeah, it's great.
Thank you. Well, definitely, you know, this is great news, but we just got a lead grant from the Hearthland Foundation, which is, yeah, thank you. And that's Steven Spielberg and Kate Capshaw's foundation. And they're giving us a lead grant to do education and impact work with the film and to take it especially to college campuses and to high schools. So we're definitely looking for more support and more connections. So please, you can go to our website, talk to me. But yeah, I think there's so much to do with this work. There's someone in the back.
We got one right here.
Do you think Amichai has political aspirations?
No,
No?
definitely not.
I'd love to see him in the Knesset, but,
I will relay that message.
We have one right down here, and then we'll take one from on top.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for just putting this together. This is my second time seeing it. Look forward to seeing it again a few more times. One thing that it made me think of is that part of the confusion, I'll say, that is that I tend to look at religious practice as observant and non-observant, as opposed to religious and non-religious, because I feel very religious and very spiritual, but I'm not very observant. So I think that even just using that word religion sometimes divides people. So there's the traditional that are more observant, but not necessarily more religious, and vice versa. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there as a talking point, maybe.
Well, I do think that
Thank you for listening.
Well, thank you. When I would share with people that lab shul is God optional, jaws would drop. I don't think people have experienced the naming of a religious institution, whether church, synagogue, mosque, as God optional. it's such a wake up for people and an entry for people who feel secular, skeptical, agnostic, non observant, like however we frame it. But the language of God optional is so invitational and is such a portal to come in. And I think it's actually, I've had people during Rosh Hashanah this year and Yom Kippur, like I had so many people come up to me and say, I saw the movie. That's why I'm here. Like someone just came to, they do, Friday night Sabbath Queen, like ritual, and a filmmaker I know, she just was like, I've been searching. This is speaking to me. So I think there's a lot of search right now for spirituality, and people are trying to find their way. So yeah, I think it's really resonating.
But I will challenge. I'll play devil's advocate here and say that Reconstructionist Judaism has existed for many decades, and also possibly takes a God optional approach. And Reform Judaism might not take a God optional approach, but definitely is about reforming the with the tradition. And I kept saying, there's something here. Amichai's doing it in his Amichai way, but it's not that this has never been done before in Judaism. And even I'd say his father, in some ways, might have been rebelling. And when you look at pictures of his grandfather, his father looks like a rebel.
I think Amichai specializes in the rebrand. So there's something about, whether it's reform or reconstructionist, they still have some kind of baggage that, for people who feel like they're entering something new, maybe that speaks to them. But yeah, I think there's a fluidity that could happen between all the liberal denominations and a real common purpose. And but I think there's something about the artists, like even just the way that they do their, they do a whole year where a kid who's like whatever 12, 13, 14 and wants to have a rite of passage, they call it now B mitzvah, not bar or bat, but B, so that there's gender spectrum. And a kid can enter and they study with an artist for a year. And then they do a kind of performance of the storytelling. So that feels definitely very different and unique to kind of what Amichai has forged in terms of like an engaged way to enter Torah, that I think is particular to him. And it comes out of the roots of this kind of counterculture and theatrics, and now is actually being sort of embraced by they do generate for elders, they do adult b mitzvah, they do kid b mitzvah, but it is kind of beautiful to see people doing bibliodrama but in a different way.
We saw it. We had a hand right there in the middle.
Oh, I'm so glad I got called on. I've been sitting with this question all day, although it got a lot more complex after watching the film. Sandi, just congratulations to you. I've known you when you were first starting making this film, and I mean 21 years later. Just a tour de force, really. So I suppose I have two questions, really. The one is the 21-year time frame. Is that, could you have ever imagined the world we would be living in right now in terms of what Judaism means? This is such an insider perspective, what it's like to be inside. But if you look at it politically, with the amount of anti-Semitism there is in the world, and people, wanting to eradicate all Jews and what have you, how do you think about this film in this context of right now, in terms of the way that Jews are viewed and described and narrativized?
I mean, from that POV, every time we screen, it's a win, because we're offering a narrative that is complex, that has layers, that is multifaceted, that is prismatic, where people can enter sort of what it means to be a Jew in the 21st century, in all kinds of ways, ritually, around belief, around, Israel, Palestine, around, arts and interfaith. And I mean, there's just such a spectrum of, the female divine. So I do think that, there's just not many outlets to really have our story on screen. And in a way, like even just the Holocaust story, which you look at like the next generation, teenagers, 20 somethings, there's not that much knowledge really or care. So it's like I'm wrapping the Holocaust in a drag outfit, and smuggling it in, you know. But it's like if we had a film that's just about the Holocaust, like a lot of people wouldn't come and see it who aren't Jews. So I do think that somehow this is crossing to a lot of non-Jewish audiences. And as we keep growing and building, and playing in all kinds of contexts, like I do think there's something really valuable in that. And it's also offering a a place. Again, I keep going back to the question of agreement and disagreement. It's not a unified approach. It's not afraid to put our disagreements out there in the public stage. um, and it's an unafraid film in that way. And Amichai is largely, he's a bold person. And I think he's constantly feeling like, his limits. He's navigating consistently tradition, modernity. He moves in so many worlds. I've never met someone who moves in so many worlds that never see each other. The radical fairy world never sees the Orthodox family world. So many of the radical fairies have come to see the film, most not Jewish, and they're like, I have no idea of your story. And he's been, post October 7th, there's been a lot of like tension, and I think they've been so just loving and incredible, for him. So I think that there's like really like, having his family see his radical fairy world. I mean, do you know how many cousins are going to come in Jerusalem next week? Like, it's a lot. So I do, I do commend.
Get your tickets early.
Yeah, I commend him for putting his life out there, for doing this sacrifice. It's not easy to put one's life for 21 years out in public, to be filmed, and to really be vulnerable and to be intimate. And I want to just take a moment to just really praise Amikai's vulnerability, you know, you know, um, and all the people who, agree to be in documentaries. It's not easy.
Thank you. Sorry, sir. We're going to give the microphone to someone right here for one last question, if that's okay.
Just wondering, just curious about his uncle Lau, Rabbi Lau, was in the film quite a bit, but I didn't notice that you actually got a chance to actually interview him directly. I was wondering what his feelings were about his nephew.
I mean, I asked and I never heard back. I asked him to be in the film. I asked to interview him. Well, I asked for me, the uncle was the primary person because we had that footage of him through archival, but his cousin wasn't as much of a character. We had to be very clear about who were our characters in the film, and the brother, the mother. I mean, Amichai has other siblings that we didn't really put in the film as well. It's sort of, where were these moments that really were archetypal, that were tensions, that were, the primary relationships. I mean, at one point, I actually had my editor say to me, Sandi, this is a sprawling narrative. This film needs a narrator, and we need it to be you. And I was like, oh my gosh, no, absolutely not. And they were like, yes, Sandi. I was like, no, they were like, I was like, I never set out to make my rabbi and me, you know? So, but we started to pull in my wedding footage and my dad and trembling on the road and all of this footage. And we started to build my voiceover. And we spent months and months crafting and building. And then we did a screening, and, a bunch of really top editors and filmmakers watched the cut and said, Sandi, we love you. Get out of the movie. And we took 9 months of work and just threw it to the ground. And what emerged in that space was Benny. Benny became the spine of the film. Benny became the kind of tension, and I just became the scaffolding. And you remove the scaffolding and the building stands. And so, but it was a 9-month creative detour that was actually core.
I love it. Before we go, tell us what else is next for the film that you haven't shared already.
I'll tell you, well, we are going to go after Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, we're going to open Bay Area theatrical release. We are going to have a Miami Jewish Film Festival premiere at the Botanical Garden, and I'm bringing my mom. And she says every mother should have an experience like this. She came to Tribeca, she came to San Francisco. You know, she was with 900 people in Tribeca and 700 people in San Francisco, and she's like seriously kvelling. So that is really meaningful. And then we're going to play in Atlanta, San Diego. Like, we're going to start international again in March, and probably Greece. And the film's just really going everywhere. So be a part of it, you know, reach out. And I'm just, you know, I just also want to say, you have been such a rock of support throughout this whole process. You know, from giving us, I want to give you, from doing a rough cut screening here to connecting us with ideas and connections and archival, and just like, you're really a champion of so many of us filmmakers, and I just also bow to you and thank you.
No bowing in Judaism. Thank you. Sandi, thank you so much.
Say,
New
so in New York
IFC
City,
Theater.
it's at IFC Center through next Thursday, the 26th, which is on West 4th and 6th Avenue, the IFC. So thank you so much.
Thank you all so much. Have a happy Hanukkah, happy holidays, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Have a good night.